Welcome for today's lesson. Tried to plan for this lesson for some time. It has not been possible. But I think from now, we hope that we will be able to proceed. We agreed that we are going to do some bit of lessons from land reclamation and land rehabilitation. A good number of us, I'm sure, we were able to get the pamphlets, and we are hoping that you are going to make use of it. So we want to briefly go through some one or two areas on land reclamation, maybe the introduction bit, and from there another lesson maybe tomorrow. We are going to do land, that is the things, some other things to do with the land reclamation. So we're going to start by looking at the definitions of land reclamation, what is land reclamation, and of course, what are other items that are related to land reclamation. Land reclamation is the process of converting wasteland into farmland for growing crops and keeping of animals. The piece of land that is involved in this case was maybe a desert, and then that desert is brought back or is converted into useful land in such a way that you can grow crops and you can keep animals there. For example, I want us to have a look at this piece of land. This is an Egyptian desert. This is Egypt. They are trying to make sure that this piece of land is productive. So you can see that they are trying to establish trees, tree cover. Others have set up maybe canals to bring water into those areas. You can also see that on this photograph on the lower end, they are trying to green the desert. This is actually a photograph that has taken place in Israel, that is in the Negev desert. So whatever they are trying to do here is that they are trying to convert this wasteful land or this wasteland into a more productive land. So that is what we define, or that is what we refer to as land reclamation, right? There is also something else that is related to reclamation, and we call it rehabilitation. The land in this case was once useful, but then other processes like mining came in, and then that land became wasted. And therefore, when we do land rehabilitation, then we are trying to restore that piece of land into its former productive state. Look at this photograph. You can see that before mining took place, this piece of land was like that. Then after mining, you can see that there were several holes that were left on the piece of land after mining took place. So now what will happen is that now we have to restore that piece of land, or maybe now look for a way we will make that piece of land become productive. That is what we call land rehabilitation. Why do we have to do land rehabilitation and land reclamation? One of the reasons is because we want to increase food production to feed the population that is ever increasing. And for the only way to increase food production is to ensure that land is available. And that is why we have to reclaim land. Another thing we realize is that there is the land is increasingly becoming little, or land, we have a shortage of land. And therefore, to overcome that, we have to ensure that land is available. So that is what that's why we have to do land reclamation to ensure that land is enough, population is growing, there is continuous encroachment. So to avoid that, then what we do is we reclaim land. Right. There are several methods of land reclamation that we can do. The most common method that we use is the one that we call irrigation as a method of land reclamation, where we will supply water to a region that does not receive adequate rainfall. And that will ensure that the place has continuous crop production. I'm looking at an area that is an area like a desert area or a semi-arid area with low rainfall. There are prolonged periods of drought, and the amount of rainfall that is received in those areas is not enough to sustain the growth of crops. So we do irrigation. The reason why we can do irrigation, one of the things is that then there has to be a dam or a reservoir that has to be set up so that now they will get water from those dams or those reservoirs and supply water to those regions. The advantage is that those reservoirs can be used for the generation of hydroelectric power. It can also be used for fish farming. They can supply water for domestic use. And at the same time, they can also help to control flooding. Let's look at the methods of land reclamation. Methods of irrigation. We have the most common methods. I think some of us have been able to do it, especially those who have grown in the countryside. Water lifting methods, where you lift water from a source using a bucket or a watering can, and then you pour it onto the crops. This one is common in our villages. It is also used in market gardens or farms that are next to the rivers. And then on that photograph, you can see there are those two women who are getting water from above and then watering those crops that are adjacent. That is one of the methods that we call the water lifting methods. Right. The other one is flood irrigation, where we divert the river water into a canal, and then the plots to the plots where it is flooded. And this one is common in irrigation schemes, very common in the irrigation schemes. I think the photograph is able to give us a very good picture of flood irrigation or basin irrigation. We also have sprinkler or overhead irrigation, where the water is taken to the fields by pipes, and then they are applied on crops using the sprinklers that are mounted on vertical pipes. And I think this diagram is able to show us clearly what we are calling sprinkler irrigation. The other form of irrigation is trickle irrigation. And the trickle irrigation involves the use of plastic pipes. And those plastic pipes have holes, and those holes are at particular intervals depending on where the crop is or where the plant is. And from there, the water will trickle to the base of the plant. And as a result of that, that is going to minimize the wastage of water a lot. I think the diagram is able to show us clearly. You can see that each plant, there is a hole, and then the hole is connected to the main pipe, and then from there each plant is able to get the necessary rations of water. It's popular where there is fruit and flower growing, especially in those irrigation farms that deal with a lot of horticulture. Right. We also have canal irrigation. I think this one is an example of canal irrigation that is in Yata, in Machakos, where water is directed to farms through canals. And this one is common in the areas that experience low amounts of rainfall. We also have drip irrigation. Drip irrigation involves inverting bottles that are filled with water to the roots of a plant, especially the young plants. They are also used in areas that receive low rainfall, and they can be used to grow trees, fruit trees, and also the flowers. Now, that photograph is a photograph showing the president of Uganda, this Yoweri Museveni, doing drip irrigation on one of his farms. So the other method that we are going to look at that involves land reclamation, it is the drainage of swamps. And the drainage of swamps, you can see in such a photograph, you can see that the place is waterlogged, meaning that there is very little farming that can take place on such kind of land because it is already so much waterlogged. So the method that we're going to use is to remove the waters from such such pieces of land, meaning that we are going to look for ways of draining excess water, because those places are breeding grounds for disease-causing vectors. The waterlogged is also not suitable for agriculture. And also those areas are prone to flooding. So we have to come up with ways of ensuring that the waters are removed. And the processes will involve digging ditches for water to ooze out or to flow away under the influence of gravity. I think this one was done that time in Kakuzi, around on my way to Nairobi. Planting of eucalyptus, also in Kakuzi, has also been taken up to drain a lot of water that is around Makuyu. Then laying of perforated pipes in ditches so that water will seep through those perforated pipes and flow away by the influence of gravity. The areas in Kenya that have been reclaimed by draining, we have Ribayala. Now, when you look at that photograph, you can also see that this is Ribayala actually, and those are school-going kids. But some of the areas where they are passing through the swamps, they are completely waterlogged. There is a lot of water in it. The photograph that is also down there, you can also see that these are the lower courses of Ribayala. And therefore, there is a lot of, the places are completely swampy. And so the efforts have been done to reclaim some of those areas and make them productive. And those are some of those areas that we are talking about. Now, as we talk about the waterlogging along Ribayala, we should also discover that those are not the only places, or those are not the only methods that are used to reclaim land. We still have places that are affected by pests, because sometimes pests can be a menace, they can be a problem to people, and therefore land reclamation has to take place in some of those areas so that the place can actually be rendered productive. And some of the pests that we talk about are the common ones like mosquitoes. Mosquitoes are some of the common pests, and some of those pests can actually be dangerous. And how do we deal with pests like mosquitoes? We can do fumigation You can drain stagnant waters. You can spray. You can clear the bushes near the settlements because they thrive on such damp environments. And when you do so, you are able to control those pests. We also have rodents, bats, squirrels, porcupines, especially the bats. Like in Moya, we also have the querea, which are a menace to the rice farmers. And what you can do in such a scenario is to deal with them. You do trapping. People can also poison the rodents. They can also do hunting. They can also scare the bats, like this old man is trying to scare them away by throwing maybe stones at them or coming up with scarecrows. And that is also one of the ways that which you can actually deal with the rodents in a biological way. So when we meet in the next lesson, what we're going to do, we are going to look at other methods that we can use to control or to reclaim land or to rehabilitate land. Otherwise, have a good afternoon. Let's meet later.